Let's get going. So me and Jonathan will be your moderators, so we'll throw out all the questions that come through the chat. Don't hesitate to ask any questions, and we'll get started. So to introduce our panelists today, you have Tim Williams and Danny Corder. Tim has 10 years plus experience in permanent mold, Danny 40 years in polishing. You guys want to say a little bit more before we get started?
Sure. I think Danny's kind of the guy on the spot today. So Danny, 40 plus years. I mean, tell me a little bit about you, your background. You know, I think as people were hopping on, you explained you were from right here in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, but give us a little more color.
Well, I see, like born and raised in Lawrenceburg, 1961, of course. That tell you how old I am. And I actually used to live right across the alley from Baseball Products.
Okay. And
I got out of school in 1980, relaxed a little bit for a few months. Then Mr. Justin Weber kind of tagged me when I was taking a bag of garbage to the alley and said, "Would you like a job, young man?" That was in November. No, that was October 31st or somewhere around like that. He goes, "Well, show up tomorrow," and that was November the 1st, and I haven't left yet. 40 years.
So were you always involved on the polishing side, or have you been in different departments since you've been at BPI?
Well, in the first year or so, you know, we only had like 10, 12 employees when I was here the first couple of years. So we all done some pouring, casting metal, machining, polishing, and plating it.
Okay, so a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything in the beginning.
So you might know some castings, huh?
I know some castings, a little bit about them.
All right. Well, with that,
let's get started.
What is metal polishing?
Metal polishing is actually taking less metal off as you can of the casting and creating a smooth, silky finish.
Okay. So is it always the same finish?
No. Okay. You got there's actually a rough finish where you just like taking off a gate and parting lines. Then you got a belted finish where you just belt it all over, anywhere from say a 36 grip belt all the way down to a 500 grip belt. But then you got a mirror chrome finish, which requires like it's here, which starts out with a 240 belt to a 500 grip belt. Then it gets buffed to a mirror shine.
So what's the ultimate goal? I mean, you have customers or prospects that come in with different end surface finish requirements that you're meshing belts and grinding or polishing or buffing. You know, what's it sounds like every part's different. What's the goal?
The goal is to give our customer the finish they want.
Okay.
And, you know, make it look as good as possible for them.
Okay. So it sounds like that can often depend on, you know, you said customer requirements, but maybe industries that they're in, or
yes,
whether the part's visible or not visible to end user. In you know, even on that, if they're preparing it for some kind of coating or plating display.
Yeah, like powder coating, we do like a DA finish. It's a dual action oral grinder that actually got a rotary that cuts, then actually it's got another option of smoothing that casting out to a smooth finish.
Okay. So
before powder coating.
So really understanding the difference between the types of coating applications is probably important as well, too.
Yes, it is very important. I mean, like chrome plating, no, you just can't leave it as is, or a lot of roughness on it or anything.
Okay. So when you're polishing, really, it sounds like end customers' needs in mind and application in mind, but really understanding the type of metals is very important as well.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
Hey, Tim, before you move on, just want to let you guys know, Anybody on it has a live question, go ahead and put those in the question field. We'll try to answer those as they come across. And we did have our first question that came across from Chris. He said, do most of BPI's products have a polishing operation? And if you guys could talk to that.
Good question.
No, they don't. Most of them do. Oh yes, most of them do have a polishing operation. Yeah, but there's a few that don't require it. Very few.
So what's the goal behind that? Is that, do those few not because they come out of the mold ready to go, or is it industry specific? Is it product specific?
Well, actually, it could be a machine finished, or it could be just a rough trim of the gate.
Okay.
And stuff, and leave the surface as is. It's, product finish.
Okay. So I mean, sometimes the parts can be hidden, and they
you don't see it, so nothing shows.
Yeah. So it just becomes a form, fit, and function part rather than a high cosmetic visible to
no
end user.
cosmetics to it.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
make sure the function's all right on it.
Okay. So you mentioned some of the different tools that you may use, whether it's a DA for some of the powder coating or some of the buffing tools. What's the difference between grinding versus polishing?
Well, grinding, you take off quite a bit of metal, okay? And, really, you got to watch what you're doing, but you take it down, quite a bit of it. But polishing, you want to hold the contour and take off as less metal as possible.
Okay. So you may use the grinding like you had mentioned for, getting gates and risers down to where you need to if it's not done on the machining side. Whereas polishing may be more of that finessing where you're trying to get a little bit less of the material off and really taking that larger chunk of the gate down.
Yeah, it's more like an art. You want to watch what you're doing and be careful, and because if you take too much, you can't put it back.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Okay.
Awesome.
So you mentioned already the DA. Go into a little bit more detail on what different types of polishing tools that you use, and maybe some of their end applications on the product that some of that stuff is used for.
So, the polishing tools.
Yep.
I can use a 90 die grinder.
Okay.
Use die grinders, and that's like getting flash where the belts can't get.
Okay.
Then the sand rolls get in corners where the belts can't get.
Okay. So when would you use like a polishing jack versus like a die grinder or DA?
Well, DA, we also polish the parts before we DA them. Okay. To get it down to where the DA can smooth it out and make it look good. But like this here, it's all polished, no DA on it. But most of the time, all aluminum gets DA'd.
Okay. So you're using the polishing to take down what, more material, less material, and then the DA is really the finesse side of it, or?
Right. You're taking off all the rough surfaces and things like that. They're making it nice and smooth so the DA can just put a smooth finish on it.
Okay. And try and throw you a curveball here.
Yeah.
All right. So polishing jacks, you can use different types of belts on it, get you a different type of surface finish. And you say this very nice chrome plated zinc part that you have here, where you don't use the DA, but you say the DA you use to finesse. So there's possibilities on the polishing jack that can get you that very nice surface finish as well. When would you use one or the other?
The DA, well, you talk my cover here. Okay, I use the DA when it don't get chrome plated.
Okay.
And like some things may get a little DA and then blasted.
Okay.
Get a blast finish on it.
Okay.
But, anything like zinc metal, there's only a few things we use a DA on.
Okay.
It's larger products like hospital
Hospital grade stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I
you
have
do
a
have
question.
possibilities with, what we have on the screen here. The polishing jack can get you 36 to 500 grit.
Oh, yeah.
So being able to get almost your mirror finish on some of the zinc parts, you have that possibility with on the polishing jack. And the DA, you're using, similar aspect where you can still get some of this high-end finishes.
You can get a shine on a DA.
Okay.
You can go all the way down to a pad that actually puts a shine on it.
Okay, but you're primarily, from what you're seeing, you're using the dual action more for a like a powder coated
Right.
product where you're trying to give little bit, not a lot of texture, so that powder coat sticks to the
Right.
part. Okay.
So if you want to say get a mirror finish polish, what tools would you use to get mirror finish on an aluminum part?
Well, I'd use a 120 belt, 120 grit, which is kind of fine, but then I'd go to a 240 grit belt, which is very fine. Then I use a polishing buffer.
And
How long does that take you?
How long did that take you?
I'm sure it's going to be specific to the product, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
how big the product is. Say like this was out of aluminum, it'd take a little longer than it does zinc. Because aluminum tends to get hotter quicker when you're polishing and buffing it.
Okay.
And I'm sure even the complexity. So I think you have the possibility on this round part that you're showing, because a wheel can get that, and
Right.
you can, or the polishing jack can get that, and on that wheel it can spin it, and you can get that grit surface that you're looking
Right.
for. Versus some of them that have nooks and crannies and different draft angles
You
and
got it.
tight corners. I mean, you're going to need different types of tools for it.
There's also like it's like a Leah wheel
Okay.
that we use to get into them corners and stuff when we need to buff something that's got nooks and crannies and corners in it.
Okay.
It uses a red 180 grit compound on it. And
So,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you really, while there is definitely some science behind it, it sounds like you really have to know how to finesse it in and really having that detailed out and that expectation really starting from the customer end
right.
and walking backwards on, hey, what's the end product and application and how do we apply this, from the polishing perspective.
Hey, Tim, I got another question.
Yeah.
They wanted to know how much the part dimensional tolerancing effect is affected before and after the polishing.
It's a good
So I'm
question.
assuming they want to know something about, the prints.
So whether you're applying using a polishing belt or you're using a DA sander, how much of that overall tolerancing can you affect maybe by those different tools?
Oh, you can't, if you not trained properly to do it properly, yeah, you can mess it up pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm sure if you use a very coarse grit.
Yeah, if you're using like a 36 grit on something that's got a lot of tolerance, you're gonna take off too much.
Whereas on the DA side, you're just trying to finesse it
that's
where it's not as coarse, you're not taking as much off and doesn't affect the tolerance as much, where, even on that belting side, you may risk if you have a high grit, or not high grit, but a very coarse grit, and really risk taking off a lot of that part.
Very easily.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about stainless steel shot blasting, and what is that typically used for?
Well, that's typically used to, you can deburr the casting if it's got any little burrs in it, but then also to put a nice finish on the casting.
Okay.
A high-end finish on it. It looked real good.
So you can, it's typically seen for consistent finish.
Right.
And it'll consistently shoot that steel shot at your product, but you can also control different types of outcomes from that as well.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you can get a real light finish on it. You can go it goes up in hertz, like 25 hertz all the way up to 60 hertz. And 60 hertz really throws it out really heavy. And it does put a real nice texture on the casting.
Okay. So you see that a lot in customers who are wanting consistent finish, maybe sometimes for coating applications or just visual appearance application too.
Right.
Okay. All right. Very nice.
Let's
Now,
talk about our polishing robot.
Yeah, that's very, very good point. So, you know, early on in these slides, we talk about how it is a little bit more of a art than a science, especially when it comes to the finessing of the product. But even nowadays, we're seeing more robotic polishing here at BPI and across the globe. What are you seeing from the robotic polishing? Tell me a little bit about what your experience is so far.
Well, my experience is so far, it is working out. There's still a little bit of bugs, but it is taking some weight off the guy, you know, and the employee, and applying it on the robot. It helps out.
Okay, so you're talking specifically from like ergonomics.
Ergonomics,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's the biggest impact you guys are seeing then?
Yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
mean, it also helps a lot on the polishing aspect.
Okay. Yeah, no, you know, I'll speak honestly too. When I first heard about robotic polishing, I thought the same thing.
I was skeptical.
It's got to be an art, right?
Yeah.
You know, this whole thing's an art. But I think what we've seen from the robot polishing is really taking that in taking a large chunk of that weight and that work off the people in the department, getting it a certain percentage of the way there where you're still coming back, maybe sometimes finessing it in, but not all the time, where it could be coming off complete still. Very nice.
Yeah, it's working.
I have
out
a question.
well.
Yeah.
So are you able to polish a part complete with the robot, or do you still have to use some hand finesse towards the end of the product? How does that work?
They're still working on that. It can be done. Yes.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's a good question. I think the products that we've ran through our facility, at least so far, they're with the goal in mind that they're coming off 80, 90% complete, where some are still getting finessed. But I think there's products being designed through right now too that they're coming off 100% complete. And I think it goes back to almost your different types of grits and what type of tools you can use too, because
they're
depending. I mean, you're either pulling it off or there's too many nooks and crannies or complicated, you know, parts that you have to go in and do a little bit more finessing on.
But they are going to bring a robot with a DA.
Very nice.
So it will be complete then.
So you see the application there on the left, the operation video that's showing that's how there's different ways to use it too, Rachel, to answer your question in a little more detail. So what's being shown there is we actually take the part to a belt. So Danny had mentioned earlier on the polishing belts. So again, you could put different types of grits. So this part he was showing you in zinc could go on there and come off complete, depending on what you're doing. There's other types of applications where you're bringing the belt to the part, which will allow to do different operations in that same sense. So definitely a possibility. You know, it's exciting to see and exciting to, you know, the biggest thing that I hear from you too is coming off, you know, ergonomics for the people out on the floor.
No, believe me, I was skeptical. Because I'm old fashioned.
Sure. And in 40 years, you've seen a lot, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, we had a question about powder coating. What specifically are you looking at when you prep a part for powder coating in the polishing department?
Let me rephrase that. What are you doing to the part to prep it for powder coating?
I'm putting a nice, smooth finish on it to prep it for the powder coating.
Are you taking a little bit of material away too, so the powder coat can catch to it?
Right. It's got to be kind of, you can say roughed up, but not, you know, it's smoothed out, then so the powder stick better.
Yeah, because it's still a very consistent finish.
Right. It's very consistent.
And you're doing different things with different parts too.
Yeah.
Right?
If you leave any gouges, it'll show out. Yeah. It'll pop up in the powder.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the robotic polishing, but getting into the finishes that you achieve and why you're going about that route. So, you know, talk me through some of the finishes that are listed there and why you may use one versus the other, and really what your end result outcome is. If maybe you use a grit belt that's a 500 and then you use a stainless steel shot, you know, give me a scenario maybe of one of those parts that may be shown there of why, what operations are you walking through and why? What's the outcome from it?
Well, like the modular crown module. Okay, we use a 36 grip belt to take off the gating and the flashing. That's all that's required. And then we DA the top of it. Then it gets shot blasted, stainless steel shot blast, so the surface will look the same all the way across.
Okay. So your end result of that is a consistent finish because they machine it and then powder coat it, and it's put on. Okay. So what you mentioned a lot about zinc versus aluminum. What's different with zinc than you would see when you're polishing aluminum?
Well, zinc actually is softer,
Okay.
to me. And if you really go too hard on it, you really mess it up real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, aluminum, you can finesse aluminum a little more,
Okay.
but it does get hotter than zinc quick, faster when you're handling it. But yeah, it's just one's a little bit softer and a little bit more durable, I should say.
Okay.
Aluminum's not as durable as the zinc.
I can't remember whether it was Jonathan or Rachel that already brought up the question too. So you can, this is zinc and it's got a mirror finish on it, but you can do mirror finish on aluminum too, but it's more time consuming and labor intensive.
Right.
Okay.
That is right. It is very, because with aluminum, if you want a complete mirror finish, you got to take it easy. You can't do it real fast when you're like buffing it out, putting that mirror shine on it with the compound, because you develop what I call tadpoles in it.
Okay.
Little swirly lines and pull out of the metal.
And is that because the metal's
heat.
getting too hot?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
But I could actually take anything you want and make it look like a piece of gold.
There you go. I like that. So that's a nice little segue here into defects. So, you talked about the tadpoles. If you get the aluminum too hot, you can see what you call tadpoles in the metal because it's starting to pull that metal a little bit. So what are some defects that you see or can see, and how do you correct them?
Well, like you see a porosity hole, a gas hole in a part, it gets welded.
Okay.
Okay. And shrinkage, I guess like a dip in it where metal ain't forming all the way, out of mold, it can be welded too.
Okay.
Welded or Depcon putty.
Okay. So are any of those, so you talked two different solutions outside the polishing department. Is there, if you see any kind of, crack, shrinkage, any porosity, what happens if you try to polish that?
You ruin it.
Okay. So it makes
you
it worse?
destroy it, yeah.
Okay.
Because like I said, you can take a lot off, but you ain't gonna put that metal back.
Okay.
Not even that much with welding it.
So really from the porosity perspective, you're trying to solve that on the casting side of things before you get it into the polishing department. While you can use some of that putty that you talk about, or even adding welding. Oftentimes you try to solve it on the polishing, or not the polishing, the casting before you get into the polishing side of things.
Right.
So what about, if you have an operator maybe at a machine or even at the casting operation, and they use kind of a grinder real quick to take down some of the witness lines or things of that nature. Is that something that can be polished out, or is that a defect that you make worse by bringing the polish?
It can be polished out.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very nice. So you had mentioned already from the robotic standpoint, a lot of the ergonomic benefits. What focuses in your department are you guys typically looking at in terms of ergonomics, and what are you seeing now or in the future as potential solutions for that process?
Well, we got what you call, I guess, lift jack.
Okay.
That
Is that what you
see
in the left-hand corner there? Like the blue lift jack?
Yeah.
Okay.
It brings the part up to you.
Okay.
Instead of you had to bend over a lot and pick up one part at a time.
Gotcha.
One casting at a time. Yeah, believe me, I noticed when I use it.
So that's making it what, like waist level for your team?
Right.
Okay, so they're not having to bend over if you guys have to do heavy parts, not having to pick it up, bring it back to waist height, pull them straight off of that and be able to take it straight from there either to the belt or to DA table.
Right.
Okay.
Even on the lighter parts, because you bend over 200 or 300 times, it gets to you after a while.
After 40 years?
Yeah.
No way. Okay. What else are you seeing? So I mentioned a little bit the DA updraft or downdraft tables.
Yes.
So
They're waist high. They're
Okay.
waist high, right at the right level where man just sit there and put it there and right at it.
and directly taking all that
Right.
dust out of the process there, not in the
Right.
Okay. Okay. What about the you mentioned robotics already, but it sounds like, you know, that's the first thing that came to your mind when I mentioned the robotic polishing units that we have here, that immediately that's taking away the ergonomics for the most part for your guys. What specifically is that solving? Are you seeing? Is it on the heavy stuff? Is it?
It's on every, I mean, there was one heavy arm, you know, that we done. And as I know, after doing 100 of them, it kind of gets to your shoulders and back.
Okay.
But yeah, that there. Then also the lighter stuff.
Okay.
Like the module I mentioned, it done that. Yeah, because they get to you after doing them a while.
Okay. So, you know, for the people joining us too, there could be safety equipment that you use in a foundry. What type of safety equipment, or even a machine shop, what kind of safety equipment are you and your team exposed to while you guys are, you know, polishing stuff?
Well, safety glasses, steel toe shoes, and gloves.
Okay. And you guys even come across some of those the aprons sometimes as well, too,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So do you use a specific type of glove for a specific type of product?
I use a leather glove when you're DAing.
Okay.
And like when you're belting, you can use the regular cloth gloves.
Okay. What's the reason behind that?
DA, the cloth comes off on the casting because it kind of gritty feeling like,
Okay.
and it sticks to it and develop problem with the powder.
Okay. So typically when you're trying to powder coat, you use the leather because it's
Right.
not, okay. All right. You know, outside of that, mentioned the downdraft tables, but it's important in any polishing department too to have proper duct system in place.
Oh yeah, you don't need no mask in ours or anything because, you know, you don't feel the dust going down your lungs or
Yeah.
anything like it there because it sucks it all up. I mean,
Okay.
it's right there.
Very nice.
Yeah, it is very nice.
Yeah. After 40 years, I'm sure, you know, it's important. It's important. So, okay.
All right, is there any other questions we have coming through?
We had a fun one here. It was for Danny. What's your favorite polishing operation?
Ooh,
My
over
favorite
40
polish
years, favorite polishing
be
operation.
buffing.
Is there a part?
A part,
Yeah. Specific.
stator.
A lot of those going through here, that's for sure.
We've
pretty
been
cool.
running them since 1989.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I tell you
Let's-
how many.
Let's hold this up. A little bit of picture here. So this is pretty cool. So any kind of fire engine you guys may see out there goes on the front of the fire engine, the siren. So it's a pretty cool part we've been doing here. You said what?
89.
Okay.
Probably a couple 100,000.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So quite a bit of few parts that came through here, and as Danny mentioned, it is zinc and it gets a mirror finish to it and gets plated. So very cool. Buffing. All right.
All right, well, I think that answers all the questions that came through today. If you can see at the end of the slide, there's some other webinars we've had. So if you want to check them out, they're all available on our YouTube page or on our website. And we should be having another webinar coming up here soon.
All right, Danny, thanks for all your time. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
All
No
right.
problem. Enjoy it.